You can start, Dr. Pratyusha.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. Myself, Dr. Pratyusha. On behalf of Group CEBERG, extend you all a very warm welcome to this session. I extend my most sincere thanks to our facilitators, Dr. Praveen Kulkarni sir and Dr. Somudatta Patra ma'am, for their constant support and encouragement. In spite of their busy schedule, they were available for us whenever we need them to clarify doubts and provide their valuable inputs and suggestions. Thank you, sir and ma'am. These are our group members. We call ourselves ICICLs. Start with myself, Dr. Pratyusha Kadiyala. I'm from Tamil Nadu. Dr. Najma Akhtar from Jammu. Dr. Madhur Bora from Assam. Dr. Khushbu Juneja from Greater Noida. Dr. Madhav Noik from Odisha. Dr. Anika from Delhi. Dr. Narasimha BC from Karnataka. Dr. Karthika from Kerala. Dr. Rajiv Gupta from Jammu. Dr. T. Prasanna from Jodhpur. Dr. Nitin Tiwari from Firozabad, Dr. Shakratu Dwivedi from MP, Dr. Sanjay Kingedi from Suratka, Dr. Gautam Kumar from Mathura, Dr. Vanlal Dusaki from Mizoram, Dr. Anish Kapoor from Jammu and Kashmir, Dr. Ashok Kumar from Meerut, Dr. Reshma Patil from Pune, and Dr. Jaydev VK from Kerala. So this is the gist of our presentation overview. We are going to take this session under 4 headings, that is formative assessment tools, assessment of knowledge, skill assessment. Our group was given the task of workplace-based assessment during internship, and finally we'll end up with logbook. So coming to assignment 1, which is formative assessment tools in community medicine. So I'm going to present this assignment under 2 headings, large group sessions and small group sessions. As we all know, formative assessment is used to improve student outcomes in classroom. So we have decided to present all the formative assessment tools under headings, how it's done, what are its uses, and then time needed for specific formative assessment tool. Coming to 1-minute paper, how it's done, students are asked to spend last 1 to 3 minutes of the class writing the main point of the class that was discussed, as well as questions that remain to them. This 1-minute paper serves multiple purposes. It acts as formative assessment tool. It also helps students to understand what they do and don't understand. That can be a basis for our next small or large group discussion to take up their doubts and clarify. It gives students time to compose and articulate their thoughts also. The time required for this formative assessment tool is less. And if we use Google Forms to collect this 1-minute paper, it will be much more easy even to analyze. So this is an example of showing 1-minute paper worksheet, which has general details like name, date, lecture title, directions, and the important questions like what was the most important thing you have learned in today's lecture, and what question remains uppermost in your mind at the end of today's lecture. Moving on to next assessment tool, that is muddiest point, which means most unclear and most confusing to the student in that particular class. How it's done, we will ask students to describe what they didn't understand, and they even can tell us what they think might help to achieve those concepts which they didn't understand. How to use? After getting to know what they didn't understand, if we see most of the students are not able to understand one particular concept, we will try to find another approach or a different teaching learning method to make them understand the concept clearly. Time needed for this assessment tool is also less, as it can be seen in the picture. So the muddiest point in this lesson, I didn't understand. Student will write what they didn't understand, and my teacher could help me by what they want, what are they expecting from the teacher to make them understand the concept. Moving to next formative assessment tool, which is defining features matrix. In this formative assessment tool, the teacher is going to identify 2 distinct concepts that have potentially confusing similarities. So teacher will prepare a handout with a matrix of 3 columns and several rows, as shown in the picture below. And he will be listing the important characteristic of both concepts in a random order. Finally, we will ask students to use this matrix to identify which characteristic belong to each of these 2 concepts. So how is it going to use? How we are going to use this defining features matrix? It helps us to identify the characteristics that most students get confused between concepts, and we can clarify them in the next session. So this is one of the example where I have taken the concepts of glycemic index and glycemic load, which most of the students find confusing. And I'm going to list some few characteristics in random order that might belong to either glycemic index or glycemic load, or any character might fit in both the topics. So this example, first characteristics ranks food from 1 to 100. Actually, this example, what I'm showing, it is already filled, but we will leave this glycemic index and glycemic load columns empty for the student to be filled. And plus or minus will be filled by student based on the characteristic, what he understands. So if the characteristic ranks food from 1 to 100, he will put it in glycemic index because it's a characteristics of glycemic index. Second character, which is measures carbohydrate quality and quantity of the food, it is a characteristics of glycemic load, so he'll put plus in glycemic load. Helps anticipate a blood glucose response to a specific amount of specific type of carbohydrate. It's an again characteristics of glycemic load. Ranks carbohydrate rich foods based on their immediate blood glucose response is a characteristics of glycemic index. Ranks food from 1 to 20, which is again glycemic load. Measures carbohydrate quality, which will be done both, which is a characteristics of both glycemic index and glycemic load. So student will mark plus in both the columns. And more reliable, which is glycemic load. So this defining matrix features matrix can be used for n number of concepts that have similarities, and that probably most students get confused between characteristics. So for example, case control study, cohort studies, that can be used. Anything like levels of prevention, which students feel confusing between characteristics, this defining features matrix helps us to identify what are the characteristics that student is getting most confused between these two concepts. The next assessment tool we're going to discuss is chain notes. It is called chain notes because traditionally it is done by passing around a large envelope with a question written on it, and each student writes a short answer within a piece of paper, put it in the envelope, and pass it on to the next student. Because we are having a large group session for around 150 students, it's not possible for us to, it might not be feasible for us to pass an envelope. So in that case, we can just put a box at the exit point, and we can give the question to the class. They can write their answers in a piece of paper and drop when they are leaving the campus. How we are going to use this? After getting the papers, we will sort answers by type of answer, and at the next class, we'll use these answers to discuss ways of understanding among students. Time needed for this type of particular assessment is more compared to the other types which we discussed, because it requires time from the teacher to analyze and see each piece of the paper to understand what is the type of answer, and we need time also to discuss in the next class. Next formative assessment tool, which is 3-to-1 technique. At the end of the class, students are asked to write 3 things they learned from the lecture, 2 examples of how they can use the ideas, and 1 unresolved point from the class. Time required is less for this particular technique. Coming to next formative assessment tool, which is application article. During the last 15 minutes of class, ask students to write a short news article about how a major point that is dealt in the lecture applies to the real world situation. Finally, when it's done, we will sort articles and pick several to read at next class, thus illustrating a range of applications, depth of understanding, and creativity among students. Again, this particular assessment tool requires moderate time because the teacher has to assess them and read out them in the next class. Student generated test questions is another form of formative assessment. In this particular assessment, we are going to divide the class into groups and assign each group a topic on which they have to write both question and answer to it. Finally, we are going to conduct a test and use as many of the questions as possible, combining those that are similar. Because it requires teacher time to see what are the questions, and we have to combine those, and again we have to conduct a test. So it requires moderate amount of time from the teacher point. Coming to quiz using technology, there are many apps that can be used as a to conduct quiz. There are several apps like Kahoot, Socrative, Quizlet, others like Padlet, ED Puzzle, Flipgrid, many things, and we all know about these Google Forms which we frequently use. I just want to tell us some features about few apps like Kahoot, Socrative, and Quizlet. Coming to Kahoot, it's a game-based learning platform where we use multiple choice questions, sequencing, discussions, and surveys. The pros of this app is students are familiar with the technology and love the gaming aspect that is there in this particular app. Coming to the next app, which is Socrative, it's a student response system where we use multiple choice, true or false statements, and short answer question. The main pros of this particular app is there is no character limit, and student can add explanations for answers also. It can be used both as class or individual participation. Coming to the next app, which is Quizlet, it uses online flashcards. These are the study sets available, or we can create our own online flashcards. It also consists of games and activities. The pros of this app are we can record voice and add images. It is great for learning basics to build on. The next formative assessment tool is multiple choice question, which we most frequently use. When used before the lecture, it can assess the students' prior knowledge. In between lecture helps to break monotony of the lecture. At the end of the lecture, it can be used for assessment of knowledge that is gained in the session by the students. So now we have came to end of large group formative assessment tool, and we are moving to small group formative assessment tools. There are several small group teaching learning methods like buzz group, fishbowl, zigzag, crossover, seminar. And we all know that in these type of teaching learning methods, we use groups to teach them. And in many times, within a group, when we are assessing a group score, we are actually ignoring the individual performance. What happens in a group is one person will be very active and the other person might be very inactive. So it is very much required for us to assess both individually and also as a group. So how it is done? Students take an individual readiness assessment test and then take the same test again as a group. Their grade is a composite of 2 scores. So there are several questions available on the internet for individual readiness assessment test. The link given below is one of the example where this article shows one questionnaire based on activity readiness test. This is based on questions like suitable plan, personal skills, leadership, and communication. So we will ask students to take this questionnaire individually and also as a group. So their grade will be decided on composite of 2 scores. So here we are assessing both individually and also as a group. The next thing is students complete a group project which was assigned to them and receive a group score on the project. Students distribute points among their group partners, allowing assessment of members' contribution to the activity. So in this type of assessment, we are asking students to assess their peers based on their involvement in the particular group activity. It helps in promoting positive interdependence and individual accountability. So there are a variety of ways to assess group work. It can be by shared group grades or grades that are averages of individual grades, or you can use strictly individual grades within the group, or it's a combination of these. So depending on the feasibility and easiness, one can go for any type of these ways of group assessment. And there are several other assessment methods which we are quite aware, which is job station, OSPI, OSCE, many clinical examination tools, case presentations. Also, we can assess students by students' reflection, logbooks, and portfolio. With this, we came to end of the assignment 1, and assignment 2, which is assessment of knowledge, will be discussed by Dr. Najma Akhtar. Over to you, Dr. Najma.
Thank you, Dr. Pratyusha. Well, our assignment number 2 is assessment of knowledge, and for in this we have to 4 tasks. That is, first to frame one long type answer question and one short note, one scenario based SAQ, one scenario based MCQ. Next slide, please. For the long, next slide, please. For the long type question, we have used SAQ. That is, we have used the SAQ. We have used C competency 8.3, that is enumerate and describe the disease specific national health program, including their prevention and treatment of a case. And the SLO which we used were 8.3, that is enumerate the objective of national 8.3.1, that is enumerate the objective of NPCDCS and describe the strategies of this program, and this that is SLO 8.3.4, that is describe various packages of service available at different levels under this program. Next slide, please. For a long type, our long type question which we framed is enumerate the most common NCDs in India and their relative risk factors. We have allotted 2 marks to this like part. Then describe the objectives and strategies of NPCDCS with special emphasis on packages of service available at primary, secondary and tertiary levels under this program. We have given 2 marks for objective part, we have given 2 marks for strategy part, and 2 marks for the packages of service available at different levels under this program. So in total it is going to be of 8 marks. Next slide, please. For our next 3 tasks, we will be using competency 8.2, that is describe and discuss the epidemiological and control measures, including the use of essential laboratory tests at primary care level for non-communicable diseases. Next slide. Next slide, please. So the short answer we have framed is identify below given figure in context of hypertension. Since for the 2 figures we are giving 1 marks each, and second is briefly explain the 2 concepts depicted in these 2 figures, and we are going to give 2 marks for the explaining these 2 figures, and in total it is going to be of 6 marks. Next slide, please. Scenario-based short answer. Mr. XYZ, 50 years, a known case of 50 years of age, a known case of type 2 diabetes mellitus since 3 years. His BMI is 30.4 kg per meter square. He is he is bank manager by profession and was recently advised by some Ayush doctor the following dietary practices. First is not to consume rice at all. Consume at least 50 gram desi ghee per day. Not to consume milk. Eat 3 meals a day. So question is like, give your opinion on the appropriateness of dietary advice. For this we are giving 1 mark. And second is briefly explain the underlying scientific rationale in case you reinforce the same or advise otherwise. For that we are going to give 4 marks. In total it is going to be of 5 marks. Next slide, please. For the scenario based MCQ, student have to choose the correct option or options. So scenario is Mr. ABC, 50 years old, documented case of hypertension for 3 years, reported to OPD with BP of 180 by 90 mmHg. He is tailor by profession and is having BMI of 26.4 kg per meter square, and he is taking prescribed treatment on and off. After management of his BP and prescribing him the required treatment, your advice to the patient to him at discharge would include: first option is warning about the complication if proper treatment and regular follow-up is not done. Second, consume at least 50 gram desi ghee per day. Third, eating pickles and papad and processed food. Fourth, engage in vigorous exercise for 15 to 20 minutes for more than 5 days per week, and at least eat less than 5 grams of common salt per day. Next slide, please. For our third assignment, that is skill assessment, I hand over the session to Dr. Bora.
Thank you, madam. So for third assignment is skill assessment. Here we are going to assess skill of the intern as a form of workplace-based assessment. Next slide. So for workplace-based assessment for intern doctors, we are going to use a tool that is mini clinical evaluation exercise form. This tool can be used while intern doctor is doing his duty in community medicine, in a rural health training center or in urban health center. It can be used for various routine duties he is performed, like we are giving an example like when he is providing care to an antenatal mother who has come for antenatal visit in the rural health center. Here, this skill can be assessed by faculty from community medicine or medical officer who is familiar with this mini clinical evaluation exercise formats. Now, skill who have to be assessed is clinical performance of that intern doctor, and usually it takes 15 to 20 minutes for assessment and feedback of each skill. Next slide, please. So this is a one proforma we have proposed for mini clinical evaluation exercise. Here it mentions the date of assessment, name of the doctor, assessor name and designation, a brief summary of the case. Here we are, for example, we are taking a case of pregnant woman who is coming for antenatal checkup with a local OPD or local ASA, and is sitting maybe rural health training center OPD. Next slide. So this is the proforma where different skill of the intern doctor can be assessed while he is doing his routine works. Like here we are evaluating him when he is taking care of a pregnant woman during antenatal visit. Though all the skill can be evaluated at the same time, but we propose that for his convenience for the assessor as well as the student, and for evaluation properly, we can assess one or two skills at a time. And during the course of the intern's posting, during the community medicine posting, all the skill can be assessed, and any intervention or any improvement needed, that can be corrected. And at the end of the posting, he can master all the skill, and also evaluation can be completed. So skill in this case we are going to evaluate is basic interview skill, history taking skill, physical examination, counseling skill, clinical judgment, professionalism, organizational efficacy, and overall care skill. Now next slide. So for evaluation of basic interview skill, so first in the proforma, first part contain the various component of the skill. Then the column contain the how to evaluate the skill. Here we can classify it as below expectation, meet expectation, or above expectation. And to help the assessor to evaluate, there is one rubrics is present. We'll explain later. So with the help of rubrics, he can score to the intern doctor. And on the last column, there is comment section. These comments he has to the assessor write during evaluation, and after the evaluation complete, these comments are provided to the intern doctor so that he can improve. So in the basic interview skill, we can assess whether the doctor is providing whether the report building is proper or not, whether the doctor is using clear, understandable language to the pregnant woman, whether use of non-verbal communications are present or not, like eye movement, hand movement, etc. Then listening to patient concern, then making the patient comfortable in the OPD, showing empathy or respect to the patient. This skill can be evaluated. Then the next slide, please. So while evaluation, this is the assessment rubric where we can assess, evaluate if he is meeting expectation or not by if this following criteria is present. For example, when the communication skills are sound, when the patient-centered communication is present, whether building up trust and rapport is well, when he is respectful to the patient and compassionate, and then we can say that the intern doctor is meeting the expectation. Next slide. So similarly, in the mini clinical evaluation, we can also assess the counseling skill of the doctor. For example, whether he is providing suitable advice and option according to the need. For this antenatal case, suppose what are the advices like dietary advices, family planning advices, breastfeeding advices, then options like institution delivery, whether these are provided properly or not, ability to listen patient attentively and actively, then identification of resolving patient concern. The patient may have some concern whether they are properly identified or resolved or not. These skills can be also assessed. Then also use of certain tools like booklets, for example, for breastfeeding, certain booklet for attachment and good positioning may be there, whether they are using or the doctor is using or not. Then specimen like family planning specimen may be there, which are used or not, that can be assessed. Then explaining the pros and cons of different options, whether these skills are present or not, we can assess. Next slide, please. In this way, history taking skill can be also assessed, and which can be divided into different components as shown in the slide. Next slide. Again, the physical examination skill of the intern doctor can be also assessed, and which is divided into different components we propose. Next slide. So clinical judgment of the intern doctor can be also assessed like that. Next slide. Again, professionalism, like maintaining patient privacy, whether empathy toward the patient is present or not, and ethical behavior like doctor-patient relationship properly maintained. These skills can be assessed. Then organizational efficacy, like time management, whether how much time he has used to examining the patient. Then maintaining proper record, because in the PhD level, various record or register to be maintained. Whether these are maintained for that patient or not by the intern doctor, we can assess. Then involvement of field team, like involvement of paramedical worker during, suppose giving the TT injection to the antenatal woman, whether they are involved or not. Local ASA is involved or not, this can be assessed during evaluation. Next slide. In the last part, there is a feedback section where assessor has to give the feedback to the intern doctor, what part he has done well and what are the areas where some improvement can be done. Then there should be an agreed action plan to be made for the period of his posting during the PHC or in the urban health center where this improvement can be done. And in the lastly, intern doctor reflection of the assessment to be there, which include his experience, his feeling about the assessment, what he has learned, and what he needs to do for the improvement can be included. In this way, through mini clinical evaluation exercise, we can assess skill of an intern doctor during his posting in community medicine department. The next part in the logbook section will be presented by Dr. Pratyusha and Dr. Nazma. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Madhu sir. So moving on to the next assignment, assignment 4, which is logbook. Identifying competency to be documented in logbook and tabulate the details required. So we are going to discuss this documentation under two headings. One is documentation of field visit and the other one is skill documentation. Coming to documentation of field visit, the name of the activity planned is visit to large scale water purification plant. It's a group activity. The competency which we choose that fits to this activity is describe concept of safe and wholesome water, sanitary sources of water, water purification processes, water quality standards, concepts of water conservation and rainwater harvesting. Under this broad competency, the SLOs that will be addressed in this activity is describe large-scale water purification process and describe the criteria and standards for drinking water quality. Documentation of field visit under components of the activity. First thing is activity will be planned. Second one, orientation on water purification process will be given to the student at large scale. water purification process at large scale will be given to the students in large group session, which will be for 1 hour. Learner visits water purification plant in small groups for the duration will be for 3 hours. In this, the activities planned are: learner sees various steps of purification in the plant. Learner sees the real functioning of rapid sand filters. Learner identifies newer techniques in water purification, if any available at the plant. Basically, we usually see gravity type of rapid sand filters in most of the plants. So if at all that plant will have a newer techniques like pressure based water purification, that they can document. The next one is learner visits the lab to see water quality tests such as physical parameters, biological parameters that can be assessed. A debrief of learning done is provided by the instructor, and learner writes a summary of observation and reflection, which requires 45 minutes. Student can even attach the images of various water purification process that he saw at the plant, provided that if the plant allows them to take a pictures, and they can document it in portfolio. Criteria for successful completion of activity is: activity will be completed and documented in the logbook, reflections and summary of the observations recorded in portfolio. Numerical scoring of activity is not required for this particular activity, but documentation in portfolio and annexure of logbook is required. The portfolio documentation is completely up to the university rules or feasibility of the department. This is how this field visit documentation will be recorded in logbook. The competency addressed is CM 3.2. Name of the activity is visit to large scale water treatment plant. Date will be 3rd 10/20. Attempt is first visit. Meets expectations. Decision of preceptor is completed, and feedback received by learner is yes. A recommended action when learner is not successful: we will provide feedback with corrections to the student and will repeat the activity. Maybe we can plan another visit in subsequent posting, but it completely depends on the feasibility. So this is one example where the student didn't meet the expectations and the remedial action was taken. So this CM 3.2 first visit was happened on 3rd 10/2020, which is the first visit, and the student was not able to meet the expectations. So the decision of preceptor is to repeat, and the feedback is given to the learner. Then the visit to large scale water treatment plant, which happens with the next batch, that is on 23rd 10/2020. The student will go to the plant again. So it's a repeat attempt. And here the student might meet the expectations and the decision of preceptor will be complete. So coming to skill documentation, this will be dealt by Dr. Najma. Over to you, Dr. Najma.
Thank you, Dr. Pratyusha. We are planning IC activity with 4th, 5th semester students, and usually this group is in the this batch contain around 25 students. So this is in the short group, and the domain is skills and the level of learning is shows how and perform. Next slide, please. So the competency identified for this activity, these are the few examples. That is competency 1.9, that is demonstrate the role of effective communication skills in health in a simulated environment. Competency 4.2, that is describe the method of organizing health promotion and education and counseling activities at individual, family and community levels. Then competency 4.3, that is demonstrate and describe the steps in evaluation of health program and education programs. Then competency 8.6, that is educate and train health workers in disease surveillance, control and treatment and health education. And these are few examples. There are more competencies which since IC activity is going to be conducted regarding some issues, some disease, so those competency can also be included in the IC activity as such. Next slide, please. So for this activity, the specific learning objectives are going to first is to prepare educational tool in the form of role play, lecture, handout, or poster on awareness regarding disease or disease, nutrition deficiency, extra. Whatever the condition students select, we are going to give, we are not going to take liberty over this disease. We are going to choose, the students are going to decide. So second objective is going to demonstrate a training session on awareness of selected target population. This again will be selected by the student themselves regarding the epidemiology, prevention and control of disease, nutrition deficiency or extra in a simulated environment. Third is going to the students third SLO is to perform a training session on awareness of selected target population regarding the epidemiology, prevention and control of the same condition in field. Next slide, please. So the component of this activity is first is preparatory phase. In this, teacher will brief the students and sensitize the student regarding the IC activity. And in in next class or in next 60 minutes, the students will choose a topic of public health importance, whichever they will choose themselves, and also they will choose the target audience they want to present this IC activity in, and the suggestion will be from the taken from all the students, and final decision will be taken by the students only. And however, teacher will moderate this session and will help in reaching out a decision regarding the topic pick of choice, and also regarding the target population, so that this population so that it can be relatable. So next is that division of the class will be done into 3 to 4 groups, and the chosen topic will be divided according into epidemiology, signs and symptoms, and it will be divided among students, and the students will be allowed to make groups and make and divide assignments. However, teacher will be required to make this process smooth, and assignment of role play, lecture and the posters and the handouts or the extra will be will be done by the teachers and the students, and the group students will decide for themselves what they choose to participate in. Then regarding the date of the mock test, after assigning all the work, there a date will be finalized regarding the mock test, which will be decided by the students and the teacher depending upon the feasibility. Next slide, please. The mock test will be preferably after 3-4 days. So in the mock test, which the rehearsal will be conducted by each group of the presentation of whatever they have prepared, and the teachers and the other fellow students from the groups other groups will give their feedback, so as to improve the presentation content of the presentation, and also the presentation as such regarding the way if there is no eyes to eye contact, if there is the students are reading through the poster only, and they are not contacting, they are not involving their audience, and all the regarding the content and the communication skill, feedback will be provided to all the students. Thereafter, we will finalize the date of activity, IC activity. What if we find that a group is not so competent, we can again repeat the mock test, so that students are confident before actual presentation. Then we will finalize, thereafter we will finalize date of actual activity. It will be decided by the students and the teachers, and once the date has been finalized, the arrangement of field visit, permission, whatever permission has to be sought, and the availability of the audience will be assured by coordinating with the medical officer or field demonstrator of the PHC, concerned PHC. During the activity, on the day of actual IC activity, the students will be assessed based on the improvement in their communication skill, which was based on the feedback which were provided to them in the mock test or during the time of rehearsal. Next slide, please. So criteria for successful completion of this activity will be the actual improvement which is there in their communication skill based on the feedback which was given in the rehearsals, and also the group will be assessed based on the engagement of their audience through active participation of the target population. So for this we don't need do the numerical scoring of the activity as such, and the document. However, this activity has to be documented in portfolio, and an annexure of a logbook is required. Next slide, please. So this is how we are going to document this activity in the in their logbooks. Next slide. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all for patient listening. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Sanjay Bedi sir for organizing such a wonderful course, and all the facilitators who make us competent in implementing this competency-based medical education curriculum. Thank you one and all. I'll now hand over the session to the facilitators.
Thank you very much, Pratyusha, Dr. Najma, and Dr. Madhu for leading the session wonderfully. So I think I'm seeing two questions. One is, am I audible, Dr. Pratyusha?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah.
You're audible.
So, question is how to evaluate group work more objectively. Many times some students will be active, some may not. Also, roles in group may be different. Please elaborate.
Sir, can I answer this, sir?
Yes, please.
So as we discussed in the slides, group assessment can be done in different ways. That is, here we are going to use both individuals' involvement and as a group, their performance. We can do this by asking students to assess their peers, how they worked. So each student gets to assess their peers based on their involvement. Because student is a part of group, he will be able to know who is the one that was actively participating and contributing to the group activity and who is not at all participating. So in this way, when you have an average of all the scores that was given by other students to a particular individual, we will get to know his performance in this group activity. I hope that answers this question. Am I audible, sir?
Pratyusha, you're audible.
Okay, so I guess there is some technical issue with Dr. Praveen. We will wait for Prasad sir to ask a follow-up question if required, or Prasad sir can unmute also. Let me just see, and by the time we can go to the next question. I have unmuted Prasad sir. If Prasad sir wants to ask the question orally, Prasad sir will be able to unmute yourself and ask in the next question.
Parag.
Yes, Pankaj sir. Yes, sir.
Just want to one thing. The peer assessment can happen at multiple levels. It can be happening at the school level. It can happen at the college level. It can happen at the MBBS student levels, and it can happen at the faculty level also. But many times peer assessment we have to take with a pinch of salt, especially when it is among students, because there can be certain type of match fixing when happens in the peer assessment, and that's why multiple assessment methods have to come together to the same conclusion. Because I may say my friend really worked hard, and that friend of mine will also say I really worked hard, but actually none of us worked hard. So we have to be very, very collaborative when we are taking a peer assessment as a part of the assessment method among the student. And second important point is they are the students and not the examiner. None of the scoring of peer assessment among the students should be considered as a part of internal assessment, which should be considered as a part of the eligibility.
Thank you, Pankaj sir, for that clarification. Uh, if I can go to the next question.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah. There is one more question from Dr. Chitra ma'am. It's quite a practical one. There's somewhere you have mentioned that 5 gram salt consumption is measured. How can anyone do that? So it's a quite practical one. So can Pratyusha or Dr. Najma would like to take this question?
Sir, can I answer this?
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Sir, basically, this assignment is just for the student to note what exactly is recommended in the literature. The student should be aware what is recommended and how the student convey this. This has to be this is not the this is not the reason we putting this question. We are putting to assess basic knowledge of the student, what exactly he is knowing, whether the what is the recommended range by the WHO as such regarding the salt consumption. Yeah, it should have been in the better way that we should have told him that exactly he should eat less salt. What when we talk of less salt, we cannot quantify exactly how much less salt we have to take. So we have put it as 5 grams like a day. That's, I hope that I answer the question.
Chitra ma'am, do you want to add anything to it?
Praveen, Pankaj.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, just I want to confirm, is the same scenario where that Ayush doctor thing was there? I have a query related to if the same question. Why Ayush doctor specifically mentioned anything significant? I could not recollect at that point of time. If it's the same question related to what Madam asked about the 5 gram.
Yes, yes, yes.
Sir,
Uh,
this is
Najma, would you like to take this question? Sure.
yeah, sir. Sir,
Uh,
this is not the same question. This is the other question regarding it is was regarding the hypertension. Sir, as per the highest doctor prescription was concerned, we it was not intentionally that we have put it as eye starter. It was just a thought we put eye doctor because being a doctor, you we are supposed that we should exactly know, we should have a scientific rationale for the whatever we are prescribing. And being a part of allopathic medication, we are having scientific rationale for whatever we are prescribing to the patients. So that was the reason that I have put it as such, there is no intention to hurt anybody.
Okay, thank you very much for your frank and honest opinion. But we need to be very, very careful when these kind of questions becomes university exam questions, and it can become a big political fight also later on. So we need to be careful while drafting those questions. You never know which question in the exam paper will become a big issue later on. Thank you for your honest, frank opinion.
Thank you, sir. Any other question from any of the participants? And the facilitators would like to add anything?
Praveen, your voice is still not clear. There's a we hear a little bit of ambient sound from your side.
Yeah, I think there should be some problem. Dr. Sombir bhai, or anything?
Yes, Dr. Somdata is there.
Oh, hello, Dr. Praveen.
Yes,
Hello, Dr. Parag. Yeah, so like we'll just continue with Dr. Praveen was asking. Any more comments from the participants? Please write in the question box. We'll try to take your questions, try to answer the questions. And in the meantime, I invite comments from the facilitators.
Madam
thank
Pankaj.
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
Sorry, Parag. Yeah, Parag, please go ahead.
Okay, sir. Congratulations to the team for having done an extensive work at this. And some of the examples are really beautiful, starting from the formative assessment tools, so many of them very beautifully narrated. And then later on, very nice examples also. Now, having gone through this, uh, about the mini CX and OSCE, I would like to probably make a link between the two, in a sense that when we are assessing an intern through mini CX during internship phase, what we understand is that the student would have received some kind of teaching learning during the earlier phase in second MBBS and third MBBS on those aspects as well. And probably what, to my mind, what is more logical is that in second MBBS and third MBBS, we use something like an OSCE wherein we use the checklist, so that that gives the student a safe environment in which the student can perform, learn, and make herself or himself better at those particular aspects. So if there's at those early stages of professional development, suppose we are talking about communication skills, the checklist would really help the students. So the students can get to know that this particular one step or the other step he or she missed, and so that's what he or she needs to improve upon. So at an earlier stage, probably a checklist would be more useful. When the student moves to internship phase, there is more role of a global rating such as mini CX. What we have done here is, I believe it was just for the purpose of demonstration that the team has come up with the checklist and the steps also in the within the mini CEX. Otherwise, at the mini CEX, the teacher is at liberty to decide as to, for that particular component which he or she is assessing the student on, what particular step was required and what particular step may not be necessary in that particular situation, in real world situation. So it should be assumed, I mean, it should be a caution that a mini CX did not necessarily be converted into a OSCE like checklist. The checklist may not necessarily be required there when we are assessing the student in a real world situation. The teacher has a lot of liberty, and there the subjectivity comes, and which is fine, since the student being assessed at multiple occasions on in multiple situations through multiple assessors, so all those subjectivities would hopefully nullify each other and give a holistic picture. So that was my submission about the subjectivity and objectivity with mini CEX. If there is anything else comes up in my mind, I'll share. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Parag. Like that clarification about mini CX was really required. Dr. Bora, do you want to add anything like what Dr. Parag has suggested?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for sharing your views. Yes, sir. It can be global skill can be assessed also. Just for our example purpose, I have divided into many components, so that it can be easy for the assessor only.
Yes, sir, I agree that when the teachers are being trained in use of mini CX for the first time, there probably this kind of a little bit of clarification about as to what the rubric might look like would help. That would also help in bringing a little bit more of standardization of what is expected from the student. But later on, if the teacher does not use those explicit checklists, it should be fine. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks,
Okay,
Dr.
thank you.
Parag and Dr. Bora, for for workplace-based assessment. The global assessment is very important, and Dr. Parag really has highlighted on that part. Dr. Pankaj was saying something. Dr. Pankaj sir, please.
Yes, thank you, madam. Just is a general thing, not with specific related to this presentation. Number one is whenever we are looking at assessment, and let it be a formative assessment or so, we have to think of feasibility with all the students in mind. Leave the group assessment outside of this purview. But if I am thinking a competency has to be assessed in a particular fashion, even if I have a 50 student, it has to be each and every student have to be assessed. And even if I have a 250 students, each and every student have to be assessed. And that's why a lot of logistic planning is required in assessment, where each and every students, I'm again repeating and carefully wording, each and every student has to go through all those assessment methods which are we are talking about. So we need to be very careful in planning, because we should not start with a dream and later on fall apart. Our second important issue is when we are looking at remedial visits or remedial competencies are very easy to say, but very difficult to plan and make it feasible. Just take the example, say a competency which you have planned. If it is at a department level, you can work out some other convenient time. But when it comes to visits, they are going to be very, very critical and logistically very difficult. We have to plan in such a way, if the remedial is required, can we make a remedial in the same visit rather than getting the student in next posting? Because getting a student in a next posting, I personally feel, will be almost next to impossible task, so that that student doesn't miss a competency in ENT. Otherwise, that student will do a remedial ENT, will miss the ophthal, there'll be ophthal remedial, and there'll be a cycle of remedial will be starting, and finally we'll blacklist that student will having so much of remedials. So remedials, we need to be very, very careful when we plan and assessment. Each and every student has to pass through the same assessment with the same vigorous level or same quality, whichever we use. These are the two general statements I wanted to say. One more thing is, in that question, we can avoid the short terms. We know the program short terms are there, but as far as possible, we can avoid the short terms. Thank you, madam.
Dr. Somdat, in this continuation, I'll to add something.
Sure, Dr. Parak, continue, please.
Yes. In continuation with what Pankaj sir is saying, we have two different paradigms. One is a paradigm which says that the medical students' undergraduate training should be flexible in terms of time, which means what many amount of time the students may take in acquiring a competency, we should allow the student to do that, which might be the case in many of the other countries. But in India, what we have done is we have continued with the same time frame, the large time frame by which the student needs to complete, going with the same group of same batch of students. So that's how, I mean, fitting that conceptual understanding of allowing the students for remedial classes and remedial education in the existing MCI or NMC system of a little bit rigidity with regard to time makes it a little bit difficult. So although in principle we agree that the remedial thing should be there, but we also need to look at the practical considerations as Pankaj sir mentioned. So I mean, those are the ground level realities that we have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Parag. Just one more thing for understanding purpose, and somebody can correct me. As far as I know, the GMER Gazette notification says that the course has to be finished within 10 years of joining or something like that. And the first year there is one more attempt, something. So those is only the flexibility available with us as far as the duration of the course, or probably how the second exam can be attended and all. That's why there will be a lot of limitations will come when it comes a remedial informative assessment, when we are worried about. But all said and done, if the competencies which are identified, if they are not achieved, the person cannot move to the next. So we need to be very, very careful with the time adjustment, that once we have decided 1, 2, 3, 4 has to be achieved, it has to be achieved. It cannot be flexible because of the time limit. So a lot of planning is required, lot of discussion will be required at the department level, at the MU level and the institution level, so that once we decided, it has to be fulfilled. Otherwise student will think, the teachers or faculty keep talking about that this is important, that is important, but don't worry, the senior will tell the student, they will anyhow move to the next year.
Thanks, Dr. Pankaj. Thanks, Dr. Parak. So this group basically for logbook entry has nicely done two activities. One was for field activity documentation, another was skill documentation. And what is coming out from discussion repeatedly, because this came, I think, in the discussion of the last presentation also, that whenever we are suggesting something remedial, that need to be feasible, because whatever we are deciding now, like something will be there in our mind, and the remedial activity, whatever we will be planning, that need to be feasible. We have to take all the logistics into account, especially repeating a field visit. What we understand by common knowledge, that some or the other student will be missing the field visit for whatever is the reason. So what will be the remedial activity for that? That need to be planned very carefully. Request against the participants to put questions in the question box, because it will be nice to discuss varieties of questions which comes only from discussions, the different viewpoints all of us have. Other
Dr.
facilitators?
Somdata,
Yes,
yes,
Dr.
Dr.
Himas.
Somdata. Actually, I missed the presentation because of poor network connectivity, but I was just going through the slides in the morning actually. So I found that they had put up bus groups and jigsaw groups also as assessment methods in the formative assessment. So my question is, these are more of teaching learning tools that we use and to make it more interactive, the bus groups and the jigsaw method. So, what is your take on the groups take like how feasible it is, or can we actually use it for assessment also as formative assessment? How effective it will be? This is my question.
Ma'am,
Yeah,
can I
let's
take this
ask Dr.
one?
Pratyusha first. Yeah,
Yeah,
Dr. Pratyusha.
ma'am, actually that is not an assessment methods, ma'am. I just put what are the different small group teaching learning methods that we do. I want to quote that because we mostly small group teaching learning methods we use as groups, and then that forms a basis for my next slide, that is group assessment. It's not an assessment method, ma'am. I didn't plan to put it as assessment method. I just want to show that these are the different types of small group teaching learning methods. And in all these methods, we are going to use groups. So then that is the basis for my next slide, how we are going to do the group approach.
Okay. Thank you so much. I missed the presentation today actually, so just I was thinking I'll just put it up as a query in case. Yeah. Thank you
As
so
you
much
rightly
for
pointed
clarifying.
out, I should have put it in, these are the small groups, ma'am. I just put it under heading formative tools. So I'm sorry about that.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Somdata, can I?
Sure, Dr. Parak, go on.
Yes, I'll request Dr. Pratyusha if she can rerun the PPT little bit quickly, so that if there is something on a particular slide, we
Yes.
can recollect and comment. What I wanted to comment was Dr. Pratyusha and the team has very nicely narrated the on once a particular formative assessment tools, one tool per slide. That was a very beautiful thing. Now, having gone through all those things, from the next groups, probably I have become a little bit more greedy. So probably what I'm expecting from the next groups is that if the group can identify one particular topic and make one or two formative assessment tests using one or the other tool. So say for example you make a Kahoot quiz on antenatal care or something of that sort, or you make use of Quizlet for a particular topic in community medicine. And maybe taking from the competencies assigned to our own groups, if we can make something for actual use, probably that would give all the other groups also a good idea as to how all those tools can be used for our setting. That's what can comes to my mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Parak. Another question actually has been come in the question box. Dr. Prashad is asking, can remedial teaching of visit will be only visit or some other method can be used for competency? Dr. Prashad, I think that's what actually we are discussing, right? Like having organizing another visit, what Dr. Pankaj was trying to stress on, that it will be difficult most probably, because then student might miss actually some other posting or something. So we have to plan like how to go for remedial teaching.
Madam, can I come in?
Sure, sir. Sure.
See, I am not worried is a visit or is not a visit. My concern is what is the competency we are looking at? What are the objectives in that competency we are looking at? What is a TL method? And at the end of that activity, let it be anything, the competency is achieved or no. Now it is very obvious when the person doesn't go for a field visit that competency cannot be achieved. If that competency is important for me, forget about what competency. I'm not looking at identifying is a water plant or whatever. I'm just looking at competency. If that is not achieved, the student cannot go to the next level. Very simple. It can be applied to any competency for that matter. And that's why we need to be very, very careful when we are seeing these competencies are going to be there. They have to be fulfilled by each and every student. But unfortunately, what happens in the field visit, those people who have come are also enjoying. The people who have not come, they are going to copy from their friends. So if we are going to decide that is going to be an important competency, it has to be fulfilled. And if it has to be fulfilled, the planning is necessary. At no way I want to indicate that the field visit is not possible. That competency can be covered in a form of a video. Say water treatment plant. Can I show a video of water treatment plant? If my competency was with a skill where they have to visit, see the lab, and probably do some testing of a water samples. Probably, I am again repeating, has to be done in the same way. It cannot be replaced by a video. It cannot be replaced by a WhatsApp video or a YouTube video or by any kind of a reflection written by the student and read by the student, written by some other student. It has to be conducted in the same way as the original competency was done. Then only the true purpose of the remedial will come. Otherwise, all the remedials will become only a remedial exercise, but actually not the true remedial. Thank you, madam.
Thanks, sir, making it so clear.
Yeah, Dr. Somrata, I would just like.
Sure, Dr.
Yeah.
Himasri, please.
Like I absolutely agree with what Pankaj sir has told regarding the planning part. Actually, when we plan for these field visits, no, we have to be very careful. We give advance notice to the students that yes, this field visit we are going to do on this particular day, and we should try to ensure so that because again another field visit may not be possible, and since that is a core competency, we have to make the students highly oriented that it is a must and they have to be present on that particular day. And so that's why the monitoring and evaluation part of the logbook is very important, including the planning part. We have to be very meticulous in our planning, and it is not like that tomorrow we are going and today we give a notice to the students that this is important and you have to attend. We have to be very meticulously planning, and we have to inform the students in advance and also orient them beforehand that this activity, how important this activity is for them to acquire this. Then only actually this will be feasible when we talk about the field visits in logbook. So the planning part is very critical in that. This is what I feel.
Madam, can I come for one more minute if I take, if you don't mind?
Definitely.
Madam, one more thing. Take one example. Suppose we announce the student that tomorrow is a field visit well in advance or whatever, and today I get a notice the student is under quarantine for come in contact with a COVID positive neighbor or a student or a person. Now naturally that person cannot go move out for 14 days of the quarantine. Now here in this kind of a tricky scenario, department has to take a responsibility to make the feasibility for that particular student or the group of students who miss collectively to make that competency achieved. It becomes a departmental responsibility. If the student doesn't come, though the student responsibility there in competency based curriculum, but also department has to come in kind of a scenario which are beyond anybody's control, where the department has to come into picture for making that feasible for these kind of scenarios where things are not possible. COVID can be one of the example. Even whatever you do, suddenly the student is out for 14 days and the complete posting is gone. There has to be some department responsibility also comes into picture there.
Can I just say a short comment here, sir?
Yes,
yeah,
yes, ma'am.
The issue may not always be the student point of view. We could have issues at our end also, because many a times when we organize this visit, the institutes to which we take them, sometimes the institutes have some kind of change of program, and they ask us to reschedule the visit. So we have to be ready for that also. It's not that the student is going to miss. Sometimes our visit itself may have to be cancelled or rescheduled or postponed. So both ways we have to look at it.
Can I summarize what we are discussing in short?
Yes, Dr. Parag.
Let's say if I am head of the department, probably I would be very judicious in selecting all those skills which I want to keep as compulsorily logged by the student in the logbook. And my list, maybe in the initial year of implementation, would be very limited. And I will implement and try and see how it goes. And then probably from the next year onwards, I'll increase as my faculty and students become more acclimatized with the process and we become more comfortable. Then I'll keep on adding the list. So maybe initially I'll go with a very a small list of skills to be logged. That's my take.
So thanks, Dr. Parag, Dr. Himangini, Dr. Himasri, and Dr. Pankaj sir. So what is coming up repeatedly from all the discussions is feasibility, how we are going to do this. And what we have to keep in mind actually is the competency, what has been stated that need to be achieved. Okay, so we have to keep this in mind. And like there will be some activities like which actually like will be like must be done. So we have to keep that in mind, have to give them priority, but at the same time, the backup plan, like how to keep a backup plan for that need to be organized, that need to be kept in mind. So there is another interesting question by Dr. Nishant. If a student has multiple remedial exercises to be done, can all remedial in a subject be done together? So can I ask this question, Dr. Pratyusha, what is your take on this? Or to the group, anybody in the group?
I don't think so. All remedial actions can be done at the same time, because it all depends on the competencies under which that activity has taken place, and it might be different. So it could be one activity is about field visit, other could be IEC activity, other could be identifying vectors. So I don't think so it's feasible to do it at the same time.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Pratyusha. Dr. Najma, you also wanted to add something?
Yeah, ma'am, I wanted to add, like the thing is, as sir rightly said, that it is not possible to achieve all the competency. What the thing is that we have to prioritize our competencies. We have to prioritize on the basis that whenever in the field they are going to like which are the competency which they are going to need and which are there only in the community medicine. For example, IC, like we discussed IC activity, this can be like held only in like our setup. We can like organize such activities. And also like as for the like if as we have like included water filtration on a large scale, even if the student knows thoroughly, it will be it will be okay. It doesn't matter that he actually visit it. It's not that much necessary. What he should be, at the end of the day, he should be able to advocate the he should be able to educate the his health workers, his community he's going to work in. So the thing is that we have to it's not possible to achieve all the competencies, but we have to prioritize the competencies which if he miss for that he must have remedial activities. And
Right,
as for
Dr.
this
Najma.
IC activities concern, we have already put in the slide that we are going to have mock test, and we are going to decide it as per the students we are going to discuss and decide with the students, and thereafter we are going to organize this make the arrangement for the activity. That's my
Right,
take.
Dr. Najma. Yeah. So the remedial activities actually are not for all the activities, right? This will be like only the activities what you decide actually will be entered in the logbook. And as Dr. Parag was trying to point out, that we have to be very selective, have to select very few actually which need to be entered. So can I ask Dr. Facilitator's opinion about this question, that if multiple remedial exercises to be done, can all remedial in a subject be done together? If Dr. Pankaj or
Madam
Dr.
Pankaj,
Parag, yes, sir, please.
Pankaj, my personal opinion, I'll bring here student's perspective. Assume I am the student and all competencies are done. Now, if you see currently as per CBME, I get 4 weeks of clinical posting in second professional year and 6 weeks of clinical posting in my third professional year, part 1 in CM. Now, if suppose this becomes almost 10 weeks or so, if all those competencies you are going to finish for a remedial posting for me in a 5 days, probably I'll be the happiest student. I'll convey to my all juniors, please give 100% rating to the CM department, because 10 weeks of posting can be finished in remedial for 5 days. Don't go for your posting. So we need to be very, very meticulous in again planning, that it should not look like remedial is a crash course which can be done by all those absent students, though we have a lot of issues with the logistic of times, and that's why CM alone cannot decide a role of medical education unit. The department and the institution has to come with their curricular committee to find out these kind of remedials, because student will always bring the issue, the competencies are not achieved, my exams are coming, and if you don't allow me, I'll have a tough time in my university exam, etc., etc., etc. So we should not make also a short course. I do not have a fast answer, but again, better planning will help us. Probably first time we slightly fall, and as our HOD Parag sir said, that we can plan in a slow phase, and with baby steps, probably we can move forward and plan in a better way.
Definitely, sir, definitely. Dr. Parag actually has added an interesting comment in the common group. I just want to read this because Dr. Team remembers we discussed this yesterday. He has written that, can we say that reflection may not always be necessary after each logbook session? Dr. Pratyusha, your comment. You wanted to say something, I remember, about reflection and logbook.
Yes, ma'am. It's completely up to the department, ma'am, and it is based on whatever activity is planned. If we feel that that activity has potential to be entered into the reflection part, and that helps students to improve themselves, then it could be. But it is not necessary that all the activities should be reflected, should be
Thanks,
in a
Dr.
form of
Pratyusha.
reflection.
Thanks, Dr. Pratyusha. So as we are like running out of time.
Madam,
Yes, sir.
half a second. Again, I am very much having a tough opinion when it comes to reflection. I am not against reflection. Reflection at its own value, and we should not make our doctors a reflective doctors who are not the true IMG. So reflection has its own value, and abuse of reflection will lead to a problem where our doctors will not be a good clinicians or community medicine physicians. Overload of reflection will kill the whole reflection system.
Definitely, sir. agreed to that point. Like overloading of anything is not required. Whatever the tool we have to use them judiciously. Any more comments from anybody?
Madam, one more half second. If you see here, a lot of the tools what they talked about can be used by an individual teacher. We do not need multiple permissions here, and those individual tools can be utilized in your own class, and really the purpose of our course of CBME can be achieved if these individual tools are used, and many of the today's tools were at individual nature.
Thanks, sir. So, as I don't see any more comments, so I thank the team for having a wonderful presentation, and thanks all. So we'll close the session here now. Thank you all.
Thank you.